well. So I'm waiting for that to connect. Hello, StreamYard. This is Dr. Kimani, licensed clinical psychologist. Today, we're going to be talking about leaving a toxic job or wanting to leave a toxic job, but when fear keeps us there. So we're going to be talking about how to leave a toxic job when you are experiencing fear. So I have a very special guest again here today. Carolyn Coleridge was here previously, and we have her back today with so much positive feedback about her, talking to our audience. So we're having her back again today. And again, we're going to be talking about leaving a toxic job, even though you're experiencing fear, and not allowing fear to keep you to stay at jobs that are not serving you, that are toxic, that are soul sucking, all those different things. Okay, so that's what we're going to be focusing on today. So, again, welcome to my channel, Lifting Us with Climb Consulting Wellness Services. And I am going to turn it over to my guest in a moment. But I also want to say that my channel really focuses on supporting Black women leaving toxic jobs so they can live fulfilling, affirming lives. Okay, so that's what I'm about. Okay, please subscribe to the channel because we're really trying to grow the channel. A lot of Black women have reached out to me. I want to say thank you to all the Black women who have reached out to me, who have said thank you so much for having these conversations. And if you want these conversations to continue, please subscribe to the channel. Okay, you can also turn the notifications bell so you'll be notified when I go live. So, Carolyn, if you could please briefly introduce yourself, and then we'll get into the conversation.
So, hi. So, thank you for having me again. This is
Yes.
wonderful. It's such a great, passionate subject that I like, and I think you're excellent, creating it. So, my name is Carolyn Coleridge. I'm a licensed clinical social worker. I've been licensed for 27 years and licensed in New York, New Jersey, California, and Connecticut. And I'm also an intuitive healer. So I do energy healing and soul work and soul coaching, and helping people to find their purpose and passion is like my gift. And I think my goal to help souls on the planet. Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. So, Carolyn, I think I told you before that this conversation really came from a LinkedIn poll that I did. And I asked, Black women, if you're in a toxic job, what keeps you there? And the vast majority of people said fear. So, the fear of failure, the fear of unknown, the fear about financial hardship. So, that keeps them there, even though they want to go. So, I thought it would be a good idea for us to directly talk about fear, right? And just because you're experiencing fear, that doesn't mean stay at the job. Okay. So, Carolyn, I'm wondering because we're going to talk about it from the perspective of our own personal journeys with leaving a toxic job, even though we experience fear, and also in terms of supporting our clients. So, let's start first in terms of your own journey in relation to leaving a toxic job and working through that fear. How do you even do that? So, I think the audience will love to hear that.
I think it's funny. I had to smile because I've left many toxic jobs, partly because I'm an Aries and I get tired of, nonsense and foolishness, but also because it just feels like if you have a higher spiritual calling or a higher journey, and that is to help, for me to help people find their purpose and passion outside of the framework of corporate America. And I've worked in many corporate America jobs. I worked on the Hill, I worked on Wall Street, I worked, at a major HMO. Is the fear is a huge thing, and if you have a higher calling, and if you're spiritually tapped in to why your soul is here, a lot of times these situations that you're in work you don't fit anymore. Your frequency is higher. Like my frequency is of the divine. It's not of the earth plane, the 3D. It's more of a higher calling. So what happens is that I had a lot of fear when I was harassed at a job. Maybe, I was 36 years ago, and I think I talked about it before, and it was very toxic. My boss was very racist. She made fun of my name, and she just said all these evil things about me and Black people. And she didn't like the fact that I called her out on it, really. I said, she wanted to work with me. I said, I don't want to work with you. You're culturally insensitive,
Right.
And
How
I said,
dare you, Carolyn? That was
I know.
horrible.
Of course, I want to, be a good slave and work out.
Right.
And I just said that, and then she just flipped out because I hit her button. Because later I found out she was sued at another, or harassed out of a job because of racism.
Wow.
And what's interesting is when we talked about this last day, just go back a little bit. I was very intrigued because I remember when I was at Columbia, my supervisor, clinical supervisor, said, well, Black people are more criminally oriented than most people. So I don't know why you get so
Wow.
defensive about me saying this. And I've this has been around. And if I didn't have it was so racist and so offensive. And then I was written up as being defensive because I said, well, maybe you're stereotyping people, whatever I said. But
Hmm.
and then it was concerning because they also didn't want me to do the clinical track because they thought I wasn't as, smart to do clinical, that I should do more. I know, case management, which is interesting because I'm an excellent clinician. And then also when I worked at, clinic in LA, I also had a private practice, a thriving one.
Hmm.
So I was doing two
Hmm.
jobs. So I just feel like the reason why I bring this up is not to get in, gauge sympathy or anything, but to say
Hmm.
that if you're really good, that people are very threatened and that people will project all their racism, whatever, onto you. And
Hmm.
all this could have made me feel like very victimized. Like,
Yeah.
why is this all happening to me? What did I do? And it's like when you're good, you're threatening. If there's a
Yeah.
system that oppresses you because of the way you look or your gender, then when you step outside of it, you're like losing, you're ruining their whole scene and it makes them look bad. And then
Yes.
deeply spiritually, and I realized that when you let other people look bad or you kind of call them on their stuff, you're really helping them grow. Somebody told
Mm.
me that years ago, but they need a teaching. They need teaching. They need to know this is not okay.
Right.
And I don't like to constantly have to, teach people like, yeah, that's not cool.
Hmm.
And I think one time you recommended this tape, White Fragility, which is an
Yeah.
excellent, DVD,
Hmm.
excellent about why people that are of a different hue can be very, insensitive. But with the
Hmm.
fear, once I hooked into the divine and the
Hmm.
universe and God, because this system wasn't working for me, was not
Hmm.
working. And I then would get the support from the divine. I would ask, what are my next steps? And I would see signs everywhere. So this is
Yeah.
addresses the fear. How do you deal with fear? You have to first get a foundation, get your foundation going. And I look at fear as a different type of acronym. I look at fear as like forgiving, experiencing, avoiding regret. Because if you stay in a job that's going to kill you, it will kill you,
Yes. Yes.
emotionally,
Yes.
physically, spiritually.
Yes.
You have
Yes.
to forgive it. Forgiveness is not, oh, it's okay that you're racist. No, it's like, this is why it's not good. This is not why it's not okay. And no,
Hmm.
when I stood up to that, I knew they're going to show me the door, which they really
Mm.
pretty much did. I knew that.
Yep.
So I had to get my foundation together. My foundation is getting rid of the debt I had to have, I had because I had $600 for Columbia. Understanding my worth.
Yeah.
I went to church and my minister is like, you are divine, just as everyone. He goes, you are a child of the divine.
Mm.
And then we keep forgetting that, God created, every parent loves all their children. The first
Hmm.
child is very special, okay?
Mm.
Because it's the first one they're born. We were the
Hmm.
first people of color, African Americans. We're the first people, really Africans, but the first people God created.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
there's always going to be, we have a place here. This
Yeah.
everything started there. So
Yeah.
you can't,
Yeah.
you realize you're a child of God and you're the firstborn, so to speak. What
Yeah.
does the first eldest do? The eldest has to teach the younger kids
Mm. And lead the way.
and lead the way.
Right?
There
And
you
no
go.
matter if we scared, we still have to lead the way for others to follow. And you talked about something, Carolyn, in relation to, having that foundation and knowing that you are a reflection of the divine. And so that helps us work through the fear, is that when we kind of solidify our foundation and knowing that there's a greater purpose for us and
Hmm.
recognizing that these systems many times are trying to oppress us or silence us, and those who refuse to be silenced, many times there's some pushback or push out for those people. But despite that, we still have to keep going on. But that foundation is so important. And I want to spend a little time on that, right? Because when we
Hmm.
think about building up a foundation, right? I think about building up my foundation. And I know that, I'm wearing my shirt today, grounded in greatness, is that, my parents grounded me in greatness. So they reminded me of what
Mm,
my talents are, what my gifts are, all these different things. So that helped me in terms of as I go into these hostile environments, as
mm,
I go into places where people are thinking less than of me, when I go into environments where people try to silence me or put me in my place, I say, no, 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 no. First of all, you can't put me in my place because God has put me in a certain place. So you can't put me in my place. So the importance of grounding people in their greatness and kind of pouring into them. So can you share with the audience a little bit more in terms of how were you grounded in your greatness so that you are able to have this foundation?
yes, I similar to you, my parents were always, like, on my case about my mother. She's funny. My mother's a teacher, my father was a minister, and he was a
Hmm.
social worker. So they grew up very poor, very, very poor, and everything was about God, "Well, God will get us through this, God will get us through that." So they had this, my father's a minister. So, but also metaphysical, meaning that, outside of the Bible, my mother would have premonitions and dreams. My mother said my father would be the first Black bishop of Connecticut. And he was like, I'm not running this state. I don't like, what are you talking about? She goes, no, no, God told me in the dream, you will be the first Black bishop. So he ran and he won, and it was
Wow.
unbelievable. And if without that spiritual gift, if people said, oh, that's weird, but no, we have dreams that are,
Yeah.
that are I say dreams in life and dreams at night. And sometimes the divine comes to our dreams and helps us to create. Just like when I watch the movie with the Venus and Venus and
Oh, King Richard.
yeah, King Richard, and then
Yes.
the father had a vision
Yes.
of of his daughter. He said, "I see
Hmm.
you being the what," and then I think I was watching Janet Jackson. Her father had a vision. So
Yes.
this is part of Harriet Butman,
Harry
Harriet
Tubman.
Tubman, I'm sorry, had visions. So
Yes.
visions are just the divine speaking to us. So
Yes.
I think that people also should visualize their lives.
Yes.
What do you want to do? What do you want to create?
Hmm.
Get your foundation together, and that is get rid of your debt, but first practice connected to the divine. Visualize your life, what it would look like, understand
Hmm.
your worth. So my
Yeah.
parents were constantly telling me, my mother's like, you think those people are smarter than you? Why are they smarter than you? My mother would constantly say that. She's,
Uh-huh.
when I went to a different school, they put me in level 2. My mother's a teacher, so she went in there at level 3, and she's like, are you crazy? My daughter has all these A's in a private school in Connecticut. You're going to put her, I went to public school one year. And
Uh,
so luckily I had a parent that would do that,
yes.
that would actually pour that into me. But you can pour that into yourself, because I
Mm,
remember Susan Taylor said this in Essence. She said, like, we have so much freedom than our ancestors. They literally were locked down,
yeah.
I mean, insanity. And how can you get through something like that? They did. So they're
Yeah.
passing the baton on to us. And now
Yeah.
it's a mind game. We have to get really clear that in terms of spirituality, these
Mm,
are high attributes. When you get over difficulty and, racism, oppression, discrimination, rage, victimization, brutalization, these are
mm,
high spiritual qualities to overcome. And when you overcome them, you get gifts. And these
yes.
gifts are given by the divine. And this is why you have dreams that may come true. This is why
Mhm,
you have insights and
mm,
synchronicity and messages. So,
mhm,
pouring that into yourself, that you come
mhm,
from not only, great, ancestral stock, but spiritual
mhm.
stock, you
Yeah.
know?
And I think it's important too that when you talked about, just being aware of your dreams, pay attention to your dreams,
Hmm.
being aware of the voice of the divine in whatever way that might come, right? So signs, right? I know that, sometimes I'll hear the word of God. And so I think I mentioned to you before that I think the last straw for me was leaving that toxic job was that I heard the voice of God saying to me, if you stay at that job, that's a death sentence. And I
Mm,
heard that. I clearly heard that. And I was like, I cannot stay here anymore. Besides that, I had seen other Black women, getting very sick, having strokes, heart attacks, Black women dying, like all that, right?
mm,
But when I
mhm.
heard the voice of God, I knew that I had to be obedient to that. And so, what you're saying too, Carolyn, I think is so important is that we understand our historical rooting, right? We understand our individual greatness. but we also are able to be attuned to what the divine is showing us and saying to us in terms of our purpose, right? And I always think about in terms of, jobs are something that we do, right? Work is more aligned in terms of our purpose. And the hope is that
Yes.
you have a job that's aligned with your purpose, but sometimes you don't. So I'm curious in terms of when we think about your clinical work, in terms of being a therapist, right? So, what have you heard in terms of your Black women clients specifically about toxic jobs and their fears? What have you heard?
Well, and it was one thing I've heard that they've heard is so many women I work in private and in clinics, they all hear God's voice, a lot of them, or I had a calling. I want, I hate my job and I want to do foster care. And they
Hmm.
all have had very interesting. I think other people did too, but
Yeah.
the area I was with had a lot of African Americans, and they
Hmm.
all had something else they're supposed to be doing because guess what? Again, an older soul would have multiple levels of karmic conditioning to do, meaning that we are also connected to our community. So we have to help our community more so maybe than other people because
Yeah.
our community is suffering. That's why we go through so many different things so we can remember what we went through and reach back and help another person. And because a
Hmm.
younger soul couldn't handle that. They
Right.
couldn't take care of themselves and their family and their communities. So there is that karmic, and because our ancestors went through such brutality and horrible,
Yes.
horrific stuff, that
Yes.
we have a dedication, every culture does, but we
Mhm.
have a special dedication to go back and reach back and help. So I did a lot, I worked with a lot of Black women, and they always had multiple jobs. They had a job and then they had a
Mhm.
purpose. They had a
Yes.
career and then they had a calling. And
Hmm.
I just heard that always over and over and over again. And there
Hmm.
was a lot of fear financially, emotionally, because we just came through a generation that got the good county jobs and got the good, the post office and other
The good
places.
government jobs.
Right, right.
Yes.
You get
With a
that
pension.
purpose. And that
Yeah.
makes sense because we weren't paid. And that
Right.
that is good. But now we're in a different age. We're in the Aquarian
Yes.
age, we're in a higher age. We're in a time when they've gotten that good, done it. What's the next step? What people did in the South, and they did other places, and in the Caribbean, they did their own businesses. They started
Mm.
creating because we don't need
Mm.
that framework that's going to silence us. We need to speak the truth in to matter what you're doing, and I do that when I go to seminars in different places, and I'm
Mm.
constantly speaking different places about helping other people. So let your life, that women that are part of this be an inspiration to other people. And that has
Mhm.
always been part of a legacy of an oppressed group. Like your life can help inspire other people or anyone. Your life
Mhm.
can help inspire other people once you overcome the obstacles. Hook
Mhm.
into the divine. And I don't mean prayer on Sunday. I mean every day. What's next, God? Where do you want
Mm.
me to go? What grant
Yeah.
is out there? By the way, there's a lot of grants I just saw that are out there for Black women. So start
Mm.
Googling people, you know,
Yeah.
and look for the energy, the inspiration. If you see a butterfly, when you think I want to transform, I see a beautiful butterfly behind you. That means transformation. If you see a hummingbird, that means overcoming obstacles. Every time I saw, this is like Native American, every time I would ask for animals, I would see more. I would see a raccoon and I said, oh, I can't trust that person because raccoons have like masks on. So
Ah.
yeah, so you really work with universal knowledge, and that's what's
Yeah.
gotten me out and supported me. It helped me open my private practice in LA in 2008 when they said Obama was elected the worst economy ever. I said, well, I'm not working for the economy. I'm working for the divine. And
Yes.
then that would help, and opportunities would come in. And every time I said, oh, wait, you want me to fulfill your purpose. You want me
Yeah.
to help my brothers and sisters. You want
Yeah.
me to do these other things. Give me more. Show me. And it would be
Yeah.
shown.
Yes. And I think it's important too for the audience to hear that, we have gone through the journey and we have done well, right? After we've
Mm,
left, right? So in
mm.
terms of, and we feel that greater sense of well-being and wellness, leaving, but also we have done well leaving. And so I'm wondering in terms of, because I know people who are listening are wondering this. So the part about, we help our clients also leave toxic jobs because we know that it's killing them.
Mm,
But I can hear somebody right now thinking to themselves, well, you help them leave to what? Like, how do you help them deal with the fear about my bills? I got bills to pay, right?
mhm.
So what would you say to a listener who's listening right now who wants to leave that toxic job, but let's say they are so scared that they're not going to have the income, right?
Mhm.
What's going to happen in terms of their survival? So what would you say to a Black woman listening to this right now? What would you say to her?
Besides Googling the grants, there's something called, spiritual mastery, which, Christ taught. And that is the highest kind of calling, is when you walk by
Mhm.
faith and not by sight. And if you're doing well and you're a high achiever and then you've worked hard and then all this stuff is happening to you, which makes absolutely no sense. Like,
Yeah,
why are they harassing me? What's going on? You're
yeah.
probably in the mastery stage. So you have to work with spiritual principles. I highly recommend the book, the spirit what is it called, Dynamic Laws of Prosperity.
Mhm.
Understanding abundance is our birthright. So again, you're working with spiritual principles, you got to understand them and the universal laws, that what you put out comes back. So the Dynamic Laws of Prosperity, um, there's Think and Grow Rich, there's Creating Money. There's a lot of books out there that help you shift consciousness when in terms of money and finances. Think of money as an ocean, not of a lake. If we all put our hands in a lake, there wouldn't be anything left. The
Mm,
ocean is abundant, and that's
mm,
our and God promises, the universe promises our abundance birthright. So I had to really, go to my church. I went to Agape, and I heard this over and over. This is metaphysics, and that you can transform. This is a lot what the Egyptians talked about in alchemy. In alchemy comes the word
mhm,
chemistry, and that's working with the thought, spirit, and then it goes into form, physical. So how do
mm,
you do that?
mhm,
Is utilizing the universal laws, learning them and understanding. Whenever there's a void, the universe will fill it. You have to get rid of the fear. If you get rid of the fear,
mm,
you get more of that. And you say, okay, I'm tapped into the divine. How does that go through? Remember, fear is for forgiving experiences. That's negating them. Thank you for the lesson so I can help others. I'm not going to stay there. If you stay in the swamp, you will drown. But if you go
Ooh,
with the flow of the river, you'll be free. Okay.
yes,
So we
yes.
have to flow, and money is like energy. Money
Mm,
is the flow. So the flow is that the universe says, I go to this area. I get hired at UCLA. Go to that area. That happens. You just go with what you feel pulled to. That pull is your spirit. That spirit
mhm,
is the spirit of the Holy Spirit, and that will take care of you, and that will
mhm.
lead you to abundance. Because, like a good parent, God does not want you to be in poverty and not being able to pay your bills. So
And God
sometimes,
doesn't want you to
yeah,
suffer too.
no, God, no.
Yeah, yeah. And so I think it's important too to distinguish that you talked about, conquering your fear, but I think it's also important to just validate that you may be walking this path scared. You may be walking this path
Yes.
very fearful, not knowing, but knowing that you don't belong there, right? So that deep knowing, kind of overrides that fear of the not knowing in the moment, right? And so I'm wondering, Carolyn, if you can also talk about what you mentioned before about your pastor saying, "Oh, you got fired from that job, or you left that job, you've been promoted." Can you share with the audience a little bit more about that?
Yes, yeah. When I was in LA, I went to Agape, which is a spiritual church, and Reverend Michael Beckwith. I would highly recommend just looking at his videos, because it's really amazing what he did. Once he dedicated himself to the job, he avoided a sentence of something that he was doing, because he said, I'll talk to spirit," and this happened. So I just walked in the synchronicity, and I was all dejected and upset. I'm being harassed. I have high scores, and I'm a therapist. I'm helping people. And interestingly enough, at that clinic, there weren't a lot of Black patients, maybe one or two, I mean, maybe like 10%. And I didn't sue. But then years later, when I moved over to a different area in Ladera Heights, I would have, like, the whole groups would be Black. And I said,
Mm,
this is why I went through this, so I could teach these things. And this
mm,
is why he said, do not sue. But yeah, so I'm sorry, I lost a train of thought. But basically, my minister, oh yeah, he said, you lost your job. Hallelujah. That means God can use you, it was just the same day that I didn't lose a job, but I left it without a job, by the way, with a 10 centimeter tumor, bleeding all the
wow.
time. I had
Oh,
$600 worth of Columbia loans. I had a car note, and I had my rent, and
you mean
I
$2,000 a month of student loans?
$600 a month.
Wow.
And from Colombia, right? And I
Wow.
remember my manager had said to me, "Oh, you don't have to pay loans because you're Black. You got a scholarship." I was like, "My scholarship is." I know everything out of
Wow.
her mouth was racist. I said, "My scholarship is from my mother," you know. So my mother said if I got into Colombia, she'd help me pay. So she paid like a third of it. She helped me,
Mhm,
and a little bit more because she went
mhm.
there, which was a miracle in itself. In the 50s, a Black
Wow.
woman going to Colombia, getting a
Yes.
master's in chemistry. So
Yes.
so see, and then there's so many more stories out there of Black people doing miraculous things that we need to look at that. The good Black news. I don't know what it is on Instagram, but there's some news and I watch the amazing things and not feeling yourself like as a victim, but a victor. If you have a lot of
Yeah.
things against you, you're a
Yeah.
higher soul and you have
Yeah.
higher calling. And
Yeah.
just hearing my minister, the minute I walk in to say it at the same time, that was synchronicity. That was
Yes.
part of spirit because your spirit is your guiding force. I don't know if
Yes.
I did. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was going to say that that was the confirmation that you were on the right path.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
100%.
Okay. And you also talked about being victors, not victims. So sometimes when we think, oh, these things are happening to me, and the reason that I'm having these conversations that I don't want anybody to think, particularly any Black woman to think, if you're going through a toxic work environment, hostile work experience, that you are a victim. The fact that you are making it every day, the fact that you are still living your life and you're persevering and you're looking at options, you are a victor. So I don't want anyone to feel like they are a victim, and I don't want anyone to feel like they're alone or to feel like they have to be silenced by this, right? This is showing you that you deserve better and maybe God is elevating you, to a higher point, right? Okay. So that's what you would say to a Black woman. So knowing that their fear still might be there, but you also talked, Carolyn, about really being intentional about your exit planning. So start paying off your debts, right? What other kind of things? So paying off your debts, get your foundation together. What are some other things?
Understanding your worth, understanding, what you're really worth as a soul,
Mhm,
and
mhm.
getting out of the paradigm of the stereotypes of who you are as a Black person, that you're a problem, etc.
Yeah.
Practicing connecting to the universe. This is how I did it. So I really practiced connecting to the universe. Show me a side, show me this. And I don't know if I told this story, but I
Mhm.
literally was down to like $20 because I was paying all my loans and I wasn't working. And I used I'm kind of a workaholic because I didn't use my vacation. So I had work, getting the
Mhm.
yeah, not working. So in terms of not taking vacation time, and that helped pay my rent. But I was
Wow.
only working on call, so I only worked. This woman hired me in just 6 hours a Saturday and Sunday. And then during the week, I started doing spiritual life coaching because I did executive coaching
Mm,
on Wall Street. So this was a skill I had, but I never used. But I wasn't licensed then. So
mm.
this woman messed up my license. I wasn't licensed in California. And this is how the universe wanted me to do more spiritual coaching. So
Yeah.
I started doing coaching, and out of the blue, people were calling me for, how much do you charge? I'm like, 50, then 60, and then I made, 100, and then I made $150, $1,500 in a month.
What?
And yes, and I was still, wasn't the money I was making before, but it was good. But I was surprised. Like the
Yeah.
universe was waiting when I said yes to God, that, worked for me. That was great.
Yeah.
But something
Yeah.
really interesting happened. I was telling my friend, a psychologist actually, about this. I was going on and on about it. And she's like, I said, I can't believe I'm down to $20. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go back to my parents. And I said, look, I showed her my receipt and I said, like, God's supposed to support me. And she says, it says $5,020. I said, what? And I looked and I was like, wait a minute. And I don't remember I didn't put $5,000 in it. I don't know where that money ever came from. I thought my
What?
old job overpaid me again. And then they called me and I was sweating bullets. This is how the universe tests you. They called me and I was like, oh no, they said, we made a mistake. Like I was making 24. And then when I went per diem, it went up to like per hour. That was years ago. And then it went up to like 36.
Mhm,
And because you get $12 difference, like a more dollar difference if you work on
mhm,
call. So I was like,
mhm.
wow, 36. I said, yeah, we made a mistake on your thing. I was like, oh no, they're going to find my money. So I transferred the money from the checking to the savings. And then they're like, oh, and I was so nervous going to go to my account. They're like, oh yeah, we found out, we audited it, we made the mistake. It's actually 38.50 you're making. Nobody ever said anything about that $5,000. That money never, I don't know how I got it. I literally felt the universe was saying, "We support you. I was sick.
Yes,
Here it is,
yes.
that money." I've heard stories like that all the time. People who found this
Wow.
woman was pushed out of her job. She had to go to work. She didn't have money for a babysitter. She said, "God, please," or I'm not saying that's all you need to do, but she saw
Mhm.
$100 just sitting there on the floor, on the ground.
Wow.
She left her house to
Wow.
give the babysitter money so she can go to work at night and then change her job. I mean, when you work with the universal principles, miracles will happen. You'll meet the right people, synchronicities will abound, coincidences, which is coinciding, money showing up in your account. I kid you not, different opportunities came. You know, I ended up on CNN doing energy healing. That helped my business for years. I kept,
Wow.
you keep asking, it's like a wave, but it's really
Yes.
important spiritually to know what you focus on expands. So if you're in
Mm,
fear, if you're working with universal principles, guess what? More fear will come. So that's why I
mm,
said you got to forgive it. You know, forgiving, FEAR, forgiving those experiences, avoiding regret. You're going to regret if you stay in a job that's not good, because
yeah.
eventually it will circle back to you. You're not going to do
Mm,
your work right, your health, your emotional, spiritual ability. Get your foundation, put money in account. Look for, there were a lot of SBA loans, Small Business Association in LA. A couple of my clients got 10K. I'm like, I didn't get 10K. How did they get 10K?
wow.
You know, yeah, there's SBA. There's one in Van Nuys. I went up, you know, that people have gone there. It
Mhm.
comes out periodically. There were tons of, you know, I know Visa had a grant. You have to know your
Mm,
business. What do you want to
yeah.
do? What are you
Yeah.
called to? What's in your heart? You
Yeah.
know, and again, I can teach these things. You know, spend time visualizing your future. Make a list of your pros and cons. Make a list of what you're good at. Make a
Mhm.
fake card. Before, when I was working as in an economics research firm, it's just you know, a marketing job. I made a card that said psychotherapist with my name on it way before I even went to school. I just did it.
Mm.
And like, you put it up, you put it in a spiritual book. This is one of these
Mhm.
tricks, and it helps you. Get $100 bill, you know, put it in your wallet. Don't use it. That's the energy of essence. You know, it stays in there. There's all these tricks. Somebody else mentioned
Mhm.
a book I saw in the chat. It's called "It's Not Your Money" by Tasha Silver. Thank you, Tanya. Is also recommended. So there's a lot of different things out there. Um, oh, interesting. So
Yeah, I see there's a question that's being asked. Okay, so
yeah.
I'm gonna ask, okay. How do you frame your exit reason for leaving when asked by potential new employers? How can you frame not being able to use your previous employer for reference? Excellent
Mm.
question.
It's an excellent question. Yeah, don't burn your bridges. So, in past jobs, I always get one or two or three different people, you know, that I've known in my job, and I've always got somebody who's, because there's people that see the truth and see you, and
Mhm,
just say, you know, like, you can. I always pray. I ask for the
mhm,
right words. I had a coworker that, you know, gave me a reference. Because you're in the trenches, there's always somebody else down there. You know, like my friends and I, we left our recent job. We call it Nam Vietnam. We survived
oh,
Vietnam. Yeah, it's
oh,
pretty bad. So, you know, there's always somebody you can find in the right place, and you pray. If it's not the right job, they won't ask. It'll just be one of those things.
mm,
You know, I opened up an office, a healing center in Connecticut. I did not have a full-time job. I did this again. I did it in 2008. It was right after COVID. And I'm like, open up a spiritual center. They're like, what are you doing? And they didn't say anything. I did not. I had a telemedicine job. I hadn't even started it, from California. That's where I was licensed.
mhm,
And the woman, my sister, was looking at the forum. And she goes, "Oh, I know that woman, that the realtor, or the landlord. We
mhm,
work with them in my office." So I emailed her and said, "Oh, you work with my sister." She CC'd the hiring person, I mean, the landlord, the owner,
mhm,
and I
mhm.
got the place. I in Connecticut. I didn't have
Wow.
an income. And I mean, it was, these are the miracles that happen, because, but you know
Yeah,
what? It's not me. I'm doing the purpose that the divine set me up to. I'm doing my
yeah,
calling, you know?
yeah.
I meditate. I work with crystals. I do energy healing. I'm a therapist, mind, body, spirit. You have to
Mhm,
trust whatever your calling is. If it's a universal mission, you will be taken care of. And
mhm.
practice before you go. Practice, practice. Show me a sign. Show me another one.
I
Mm.
love that. You just said, "Show me a sign," right? So ask for the divine God to show you a sign, but pay attention to the sign, right? So if the divine or God is saying, go, that means go, right? But that doesn't mean go immediately. That doesn't mean quit the same day unless, you are in dire, you know what I'm saying, like physically, mentally, you're about to lose it, right? I got it. But if it's not that, then start working on your exit plan, right? And
Can
so
I
I want
say
to read,
can
yeah,
I say
go on.
one thing about that?
Yes.
Because I think that's
Uh-huh.
important. If you work with your spirit, which the
Hmm.
language of spirit's intuition, you had warning shots. There's always warnings before you're getting kicked out. Usually there's one or two. You might not want to go to work as much. You might be feeling sick.
Mm,
You might be like sitting there like I would be like reading spiritual books at my lunch. And like, what are you reading? Dynamic laws of prosperity or whatever it may be. I worked at an economics research firm, and the woman sitting next to me, the Swedish woman, had all these spiritual experiences. I was just so intrigued that she would give me all these different spiritual books. And she goes, "Oh, there's a healing group happening," and I would go with her. I was like 26, and she's like a 50-year-old Swedish woman, but I felt like she was guiding me to what I really wanted to do. This was before I
mm,
applied to Columbia. So there's always, and they were really sexist. This is another company. They were really sexist. My job was irrelevant. There was only two of us, her and me, another woman, mostly men. And it was a good paying job at the time. And I just got off the hill, but they were just incredibly sexist. And so you'll always get warning shots. You'll get a message, an intuition, a dream, different things. Like when I was at this one job, before I transferred, um, I was on call for 10 years. This is how I really learned how to work with the universe. So I was on call in a major company for 10 years, and they paid me more. Remember, I was getting the extra money. I was the
mhm, mhm,
5,000, but it
mhm.
taught me about medical social work. It taught me about healing. It taught me about the body, and it taught me how to work without having a full-time job
Yes.
and just kind of doing benefits and doing things. So I've done that before. I just asked and
Mhm,
I got a message, or I would be called to go different places or being called
mhm,
there. And then it all started. So I did it for 10 solid years.
mm.
And then I got older and it got too expensive. Paying into the insurance. And then I got a part-time job. And by the time that burnt of being pushed out of the other job that was gone, and I could teach other people in the work stress group about what I went through. But it wasn't me, it was the universe's plan. See that?
Yeah.
So you
Yeah.
have to kind of and listen, so you'll get signs. So I was at a job and all of a sudden there was no place for me literally to sit. They're like, I was sitting
Mhm.
with the doctor. I didn't have, so it was per diem. I was sitting over here. They're sitting over there. Then they're like, you can't sit here. My manager said, oh, we'll just walk around the hospital without, you'll figure out a place. Yeah, I know this the way
Crazy.
people. I said, are you kidding me? I have PMI, personal medical information. You want me to hold it around
That's
different
crazy.
units? And I got really bad. And this black nurse looked at me. She said you didn't have a place to sit. And she said, that's like almost like you didn't need to be here. Ding, ding, ding. I was like, yes. And I was
Yes.
like,
Yeah,
listen,
you're right. I don't belong to be. I don't want to be here, right? This is a
exactly.
sign I do not belong here.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You pay attention to the sign. And it's interesting, Carolyn, because I've talked to, and literally today, I was having a conversation with a colleague, but then she brought up her own issues in terms of a toxic work environment. And I
Mhm.
was just sharing with her, I don't believe things happen by accident. I don't believe I met her by
Mhm.
accident. I don't believe that I went through my own healing journey to help other Black women by accident. So I feel like it plays a purpose. And so when we think about reaching back and helping others, that's what we're doing today. Is that we're sharing with other Black women, look, I've done it, right? And I've helped other Black women do it. And so even though you may experience fear, even though
Mhm.
you may be scared, please do it. And we're talking about different ways, different signs, different things to help you address the fear as you still move forward with leaving those toxic jobs, right? So I want to just read a few things in the chat. If that's what they say to your face, imagine the venom spewed behind closed doors. A toxic workplace is no place to stay. We mustn't volunteer to contribute to our own abuse. Yes, we are divine and deserve the best. So that reminds me of, I heard a colleague say one time, I will not be complicit in my oppression and the oppression of others. So it's
Mm.
like, no, 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 I'm stepping away. Also, psychological and spiritual warfare. I love that. I'm not working for the economy. I'm working for the divine. Yes, Carolyn, It's Not Your Money by Tasha Silver is also recommended. This is so good. Survival is resistance. And then we talked about the practical question. Oh, wow, there's more. Okay. How do we avoid creating obstacles that lead is lead, I guess, prevent us from leaving? How do we avoid creating obstacles that prevent us from leaving?
How do we avoid creating obstacles? Well, if you're going to leave, those obstacles are actually your exit points, that you're supposed to leave. And
Ah,
yeah, to push you. And
ah.
oh, she says that keep us from leaving. There she put
Oh,
the word,
okay, got it.
that keep us
Uh-huh,
from leaving.
uh-huh.
Yeah, well, I would, I don't, again, I would hook into universal knowledge because before I left this recent job, I leave all the time. I kept seeing 555, 555, all over the place, 55,
Mm,
5. I'm like, what is 5? I looked up in numerology. Everything was 55, like the commercial with the 11. And 55 means change. And I knew it was going to change. And then I was thinking I would retire when I was 65, like most people. And then I was turning 55, and I'm like, oh, they said I got a letter saying, oh, you can retire at 55 if you have 50 years in the company. And I had 20. I was like, oh, this is a message. And then I was like, I can't retire. And I'm retiring for one job, not for my
yeah,
career. And I
yeah.
was just like, well, this is interesting. And then interesting, like, so you keep looking for the signs. And that was an obstacle, but it also was a message. Okay. So
Mm,
then I lived in the same place in mid Wilshire, like a block from Beverly Hills. And I
mm.
never had broken into. I got my car broken into. Now,
Oh.
what's interesting, and nobody else in my apartment building got their car broken into, but what's interesting, they took my identity. They took my registration for California, my
Mm.
business card, and like kind of cut it up, they took my sunglasses. This sounds really silly, but listen here. And then they took something else, but my sunglasses about my vision. Where am I going? My card was like, I'm no longer needed at this company. And my
Wow.
registration is like, I'm no longer here. Then in my office on Beverly, I got my license plate stolen. I didn't know until I got a ticket, and they said a ticket for your meter, and then another ticket, $22 for your license not being there. I said, I didn't know my license was there. I looked at the front, and I said, I have no identity here in California.
Ah,
This
it's
happened
time to go.
within a week's time. That was like crazy. And it was just so, and I was like, how many messages can I get? And he said, this is very weird. He goes, kind of the landlord annoyed me. He goes, did you know those people? I said, no, I don't know those people. He goes, you're the, he's like, I know. All these little
So crazy.
microaggressions. And he's like, well, you're the
Right.
only person that got hit. I said, well, my car is behind the camera. That's probably wild. But I didn't even take that
Uh,
personally. I took the
right,
message,
right.
and and it's funny because the cop that came was a young black cop, and he was kind of
Mhm.
cool. And he said to me, "Wow, that's weird. He must, he must have not liked what you were doing for work." He goes, "You sure you still want to live here?" I got chills. And he's like, he
Wow.
goes, maybe you need a new career. I said, I'm a social worker. He's like, but I got chills, and I knew
Oh,
that was a divine talking to me. So there was
that's
messages after
deep.
messages after messages, and
Yes,
then everything just started opening up in different
yes,
ways. And it was a good time because it was right after COVID.
yeah.
We're going to go back into the office. And
Mm,
I was like, I don't, and other policies changed, and it was just getting crazy. I'd worked home for a year and a half, which was wonderful. I was
mm.
all comfy at home. So it was, it becomes not your work. When you work with
Yeah.
your mastery level and it's thy will be done, or which is what Christ said in a mastery level, or also, walk by faith and not by sight. It's
Mm,
not my sight always, it's the divine sight. It was time for me
yeah.
to go. I had done my work. I met another person of color. I was working from home. She was in the office, another
Mhm,
black woman, this clinic I worked at.
mhm,
And I said, oh, I want to just, meet you. She goes, well, who are you? I never met you. We started talking.
mhm.
And she said, you know what? I feel like, she goes, thank you for all this information. She was having a hard time. And she goes, thank you for all this. Really helped me. And she said, you know what? I'm supposed to be here. She goes, what? She goes, I heard God's voice tell me you need to be here. And I realized the baton was passed.
Yes, it's time to go.
And it was,
I was
and she,
literally, oh my God, I was literally telling somebody this today.
yep.
Yes,
Interesting.
you
Synchronicity.
stay. Yeah, you stay until you're ready to go, right? Until it's like, you know what, I can no longer stay here. But also think about all the experiences that you can take with you, right?
Mhm.
But don't fall into this way of thinking that if I don't stay here, the work won't get done. Okay. So leaving it to God that the work will be done. And thankfully, if you're able to pass the baton to somebody else, that makes it even better because then they know they can pass the baton too, right? And so I think that's really powerful to be able to say that and to know that. So I want to read a few more
Mhm.
comments in the chat. If I might piggyback on her off her question, how do you address workplace conflict when being asked about your previous settings?
Mhm. You highlight the positive, and sometimes, again, if it's the right place, the right person will meet you. I think the other video, which I highly recommend that Kamani and I did,
Mhm.
this woman, I was being blackballed. I couldn't, there were like
Wow.
5 different locations. I could not get another job because I spoke up
Wow.
against a racist person. They supported her. It was just insane. I could not, even a black therapist wouldn't hire me. And I said, you know what
Mm.
you're doing. You don't know what this woman's doing to me. And she's just like, oh, I don't want to mess up your money. I said, you're messing my money, but not hiring me. And the woman that hired me was an older Jewish woman, and she ended up getting fired months
Wow.
later. So she said, I know, I don't care. I heard I think you're good. I look at your resume. So
Right.
it's like she got the message, and that was the link in. But I didn't
Yeah.
want to work on call. I wanted to work, full time. But that helped me work with universal knowledge. It helped me teach other people. So you don't know
Yeah.
where you're being led. So
Yeah.
what I said so she got me in there. So again, if it's the wrong job, you can't think about it's not you can't think about what they're going to say. You just say, what's truthful. You don't have to tell them everything,
Mhm.
but tell them
Right.
enough. Ask for, pray before, say the right thing, and the right people will hire you. And that's
Yeah.
happened to me many times where it's just the right person hired me at the time.
Mhm.
And it was, even though the odds were against me, and you think, oh my
Yeah.
God, like what does she do in her workplace? It's just that
Yeah.
I speak up, and I'm
Yeah.
not ashamed to, say things and do things. So,
Yeah.
and sometimes you could say, oh, it wasn't a good fit. Classic.
Yeah.
I need a different change, the old
Yes.
look, I wanted economic difference. I've been doing
Or when
this
a professional growth.
that there's a lot of these code words, you know? Yeah.
Exactly.
Because
Exactly.
truth rises to the top. And if they can
Yes.
really see you, they'll know if you're a good worker, this was tough,
Yeah.
something was wrong.
Yes, yes, yes. And thinking about so sometimes jobs are meant for a season, right? And it's a total mind frame shift because like you talked about, Carolyn, our parents, like they believe like you get a job, you stay there, you retire there, you get a pension. Like leaving a job, like what are you talking about? And particularly if it's a so-called good job with good benefits, right? But what we're saying is that no, you don't have to stay at a toxic job. That maybe you were at a toxic job for a season. And just like with you, Carolyn, you were there for a season, but think of all the things you put in place to help so many Black women while you were there. And
Mhm.
that is just like that was the purpose of you being there. And I just want to go back to the comment that you talked about your car being broken in, right? So I was thinking about something else too. It was like God is driving.
Very
You're
good.
not driving, God is driving, right? And we have to let God drive the way, right? Somebody already also asked, what about leaving a profession? What are your thoughts about that, Carolyn?
Leaving a profession means changing the careers, and
Yeah.
I've changed 10 million. I used to work as a paralegal because I thought I was going to go to law school. I worked for economics research firm, to get an MBA, like smart kids go to, get into those jobs. But I liked being a social worker because I would always be really intuitive and a good counselor. Changing professions is, something that you have to feel called to do. There is a calling. And I think the reason why I've had multiple jobs is because I help multiple people. When I worked my first job out of school, I was an administrative secretary at Vestron, which created Dirty Dancing, a movie, and some other movies, in Connecticut as my first job. And I was like, I thought I want to be a secretary. I went to Wesleyan, but when I worked for the people in Hollywood that worked in a film company, I understood. You never know how
Ah,
you're. And then when I worked for economics research firm, I was a marketer. Now I can market my business.
Yeah.
When I worked on the Hill, I understand how politics works. So then I worked for Wall Street. I understand like the biggest lobby is pharmacy, and I learned so much. So you
Mhm.
never know. So moving one thing to the other, like holding, like what if you're changing professions? Trust. You have to trust and have faith that you're on the right path. And because I am an Aries, so I like to move different places. These weren't easy. I'm not like when I left my job. I think you kind of alluded to that. Yeah, before Kimani, I wasn't like, oh, this is going to be easy. I wasn't happy. I was sweating. I lost friends because I would be like, you know what they did to me? I was screaming. I was,
Yeah.
sweating. I was crying. I was miserable. I was angry. This
Yeah.
took years. So that 10 years when I worked on call, I learned how to trust myself, trust the divine over anything else, and understand that my life had meaning and purpose and
Yeah.
helped other people.
Yeah.
So changing your professions can be wonderful. Do your research.
Yeah.
Get virtual mentors. I would
Yeah.
find mentors in, therapy or in school or in economics. I would always network. Networking is great because if you
Mhm.
have a path, the universe will set you up with the right people at the right time. So look about it, learn about your industry. I was telling people say, I want to be a nurse, right? And then I say, well, have you worked as a nurse? And they said, no, but I has good money. And I said, well, volunteer at a hospital. They said, I hate nursing. I don't want to do that. And I'm like, you gotta see. So try,
Yeah. Yeah.
volunteer, talk to people, see what
Yeah.
it's. Um,
Yeah. And
yeah.
it's okay to constantly grow. It's okay to check things out, and you can figure out like this doesn't work for me. But I think what's important is to really sit with yourself and say, you know what? Is this aligned with what I want to do? Like, does this excite me? Do I have a level of interest in it? And I think also it's important to really point out, Carolyn, that you just talked about is that not only is there a fear about leaving toxic jobs, there's also a level of grief associated with it,
Mm,
right? And
mm,
many times we feel like, why in the world am I grieving anything about this job, right? But it's
mm,
a lot involved. So many times if you've invested so much into the job, you've had dreams about when you initially got the job, you had certain dreams about what would happen when you were at that job, right? You may have formed good friendships, or you thought they were good friendships. You formed relationships with people and you thought that, wow, these are your people, but then you may have found out later they really weren't your people. Or
yeah.
maybe they were kind of your people, kind of, for a time period, but when you were going through struggle, they were not there for you. And
Mm,
so it is a very painful experience. It's almost like when somebody passes away. It's like
mm,
that grief of what we thought we were going to have, or that grief of the dream is gone, right? And that is important to be able to process that. So process it in terms of meditation, prayer, therapy, right? All these different things. And if I actually did a whole series of conversations on that last year in terms of on my YouTube channel because I was in the process of going through my grief, right? And
mm,
that was a way for me to start healing and still going through the grief process. And as I was going through the grief process, I wanted to help other Black women go through the grief process also. And I didn't want anybody to feel that just because the grief was there, that meant that you need to stay there. No, acknowledge there's a grief, but this is how you process through the grief also. So, what I want to do, Carolyn, is we're winding down. I want us to go through like a guided meditation or visualization that specifically addresses toxic jobs and leaving, even though we're fearful to do so, right? So, I invite the audience to, really be present. During this activity, because we're really going to go through in terms of what is it like in terms of the healing journey. So I invite all of you to really be present. And if you need to look at the recording again and again and again and again, if you can share it with other people, please do so because we're talking about healing here. So I'll turn it over to you, Carolyn.
Okay, great. And I'm glad you brought up the grief. That was a very important point because it's very, very, very painful. And I still call back my old job. What's going on? They're like, didn't you leave like 2 years ago? I still want to know. Let me just get my little gong. I still want to know what's going on because I felt like part of me. I just had a dream last night about the job, and I was like in a
Ah,
meeting. Yeah, and I knew that part of me is actually still there, but that's okay. I'm still like
yeah.
being all nosy, like what happened? Did they get fired? But that's okay. Yeah, you got to
And
have
let me say
humor.
this, let me say this, Sarah Carolyn, as we go into the guided meditation visualization, is that sometimes when we leave the jobs, we may respond differently about leaving, right? So you, Carolyn, are talking about, you've left, but you still want to know or have some pulse on what's happening there in the sense of, are things getting better for the people still there? Are things getting better for the patients there, right? For
Mhm.
me, I'm on the other end of the spectrum where I don't want to hear anything about it. It's like I've totally cut out certain people, right? I've done a purge of my phone. So certain phone numbers I no longer have, right? There's certain people I do not call their names in my
Mm.
home because my home is my sanctuary space. So you may be on a continuum in terms of once you leave, in terms of the level of connection that you may have. Now, I do have connections with some people who I'm cool with, but a lot of people
Mm.
disconnected from, right? Because they're trauma triggers.
Very healthy. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm all in the mix, nosy, but um, that's very healthy. No, it's really to leave it behind, and that's what I was saying, like forgiving experiences,
Mhm.
avoiding the regrets. Why didn't I leave? How long do you
Yeah.
want me to do this for?
Maybe just maybe I don't know, a few minutes, maybe.
Okay, okay, all right. So I want everyone to get in a quiet space as you are. And I want you also to call in your guides and your angels and the divine, or everyone, ancestors, anything you feel comfortable with. If you could have your feet flat on the floor, your back as straight as possible, I want you to think about your heart center and imagine in your heart there's a golden light. Now, to get started, I want you to take a breath in and out, and the breath should be like smelling a flower and blowing out a candle. So we're going to do that 2 more times. And this gives you a lot of inhalation and exhalation. So smelling a flower and blowing out a candle. And smell a flower and blow out a candle. Let's do it 1 more time. Smell a flower and blow out a candle. And as you release that breath, you're releasing all the toxic energy, all the fears, all the sadness, all the grief that was connected to being stagnant in your workplace. Within your heart center, imagine there's a beautiful golden light. That light is the light of your divinity, your spirit, your light inside. And if you're in a negative environment, that light gets dimmed. It gets snuffled and put out. Don't let anyone put out that light. That light is precious. It was a gift from the divine given to you. So looking within, feeling that beautiful and seeing that golden light in your heart center, again, I want you to take a breath in and blow out. So as you're blowing out fears and anger and sadness, imagine what you're bringing in with the inhalation is love, light, truth, and part of your journey. As a soul, you need to continuously move on. That's part of the soul's path. We're here for only a smack of time on the universal continuum. And then when it's time for us to go within this lifetime, or when the job, we'll be given a nudge, we'll be given a message, we'll be giving a kick in the butt for us to move to a higher consciousness, a higher plane, a higher experience. Again, take a breath in and out. When you breathe in and out, you are activating that light within you, part of your soul that knows your higher calling, knows why you're here, knows your passion, your purpose, and knows that you have all the gifts inside of you to become a success, to become abundant, to be supported by the universal dialogue, to be supported by God, by the divine, by your ancestors. As we listen to that light, we feel that light, I want you to imagine that within that light, there's healing energy, there's love, There's beauty, there's divinity, there's intelligence, there's renewal, there's a portal to the higher consciousness. In that light, I want you to imagine what it would feel like to have a great opportunities to live your purpose. But what would it feel like? Would it feel loving? Would you feel prosperous? Would you feel centered? Open up your senses. What do you feel? What do you hear if you're doing your new purpose? You might hear what we call spiritual gossiping. People saying positive things. How did she do that? Wow, she recreated her life. She or he's been amazing. Can you imagine they overcome that obstacles and now they're living their true purpose? What do you see? Do you see yourself in a new office, around positive coworkers, or around yourself creating the job, the vision that you wanted? Teaching, speaking, creating, being an artist, a writer, a dancer. Visualize it. What we think about, we bring about. Make that visual even stronger. What do you smell? Do you smell your favorite coffee that you can eat at your own pace because it's your own job? Do you smell the leather of the chair that you're sitting on in your new space? Or the smell of the new boxes when you open up your new office, your new home, your new space? What do you hear? What do you see? What do you feel? Make it feel really good. Make it real. And make the senses even stronger. You might even see a paycheck for more money than you ever can imagine. You might see a positive balance in your checking account. You might see offers coming in right and left. Can you speak here? Can you teach here? Can you do this for us? Can you teach us? Open up your visualization and create the life that you were given, that holy appointment and anointment by the divine. You are here for a reason. You're not here to be abused, oppressed, repressed, and or depressed. You are here to shine your light. No matter who is uncomfortable being around that light, it's because they are not supposed to be in your space. When you shine your light, you honor your divinity and the divinity, the divine energy of God. Take a breath in, blow it out. And with that visual, let it go into a golden bubble and flow out into the universe. And take another breath in, blow out. Like visuals of the wind, you're blowing this vision out into the universe to be activated, to be created, to be replicated, to be copied, and to come back to you fulfilled. And take another breath in, and then blow it out. And releasing it to be fulfilled. Feeling your fingers and toes, and bring your presence back to the room. Release.
That was so beautiful. That was so beautiful. And so many takeaways from that. And my hope is that everyone listening knows that you deserve to be places where your light can shine. And any place or anywhere where people are trying to dim your light, you do not belong there. Okay. So we talked about addressing your fears, right? My hope is that from the beginning of this talk to the end, that you've gotten some clarity in terms of toxic jobs and leaving, even if you experience fear and ways to work through that fear. So, Carolyn, I'm wondering if you could just briefly share with the audience. Somebody said that was wonderful. Thank you. If you could briefly share with the audience, how would they get more of this, right?
Yeah.
So, share with them a little bit in terms of services you have to offer and how people can contact you.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to do a class, New Year, New You in the new year. And you can find me on Instagram, Conscious Creations, because I believe we create with the universe, Connecticut, Conscious_Creations, Connecticut, or Conscious_Creations, Connecticut at gmail.com. And you can look me up at intuitivesoulhealing.com. And besides doing a visualization meditation, I do something called theta healing, and I shift beliefs on a soul level. It's on Zoom. You take a breath in and breath out. I was taught you shift your energy to divine, and you could actually muscle test that shift and change. And people feel like that their energy is being like upgraded. It's very powerful. On LinkedIn, I have 101 testimonials. I've been doing this work for a long time. And that's a professional site, and I do a lot of intuitive work. So I highly recommend that you join us. It'll be 2 hours, a good price. And I really feel that it can help you. When I did it at this major HMO, women were crying, not crying, you say you have to cry, but you are valuable. Some of the beliefs that we
Yes.
shift, you are important. So Conscious Creations Connecticut, Conscious_Creations Connecticut at gmail.com.
Yes, and for everyone, I will put this information in the YouTube description section. So if you're looking at this at a later point, please check that out. I'll have that there. Please reach out to Carolyn. I see, Carolyn, you're amazing, abundant blessings, right? And so people really appreciate that. And I just want the audience to remember that you are a gift from God, right? You are a blessing, and that you deserve to be places where you are affirmed and respected. And so, my hope is that, as you were here today and you received this message, that was not by accident. Okay. My hope is that you share this with other Black women so they can also receive that healing. And Carolyn talked about, in her class, sometimes the women would cry, and crying is a form of healing. That's a good release, right? We hold in so much as Black women, doing so much, being on top of so many things, right? That we often don't have those moments to just be and to release, right? So, please reach out to Carolyn for all the services that she has to offer. Again, my hope is that everyone watching here will share this video with other Black women who can benefit from this. And as we continue to do this work, this healing work, this liberating soul work, that you will also support this work by subscribing to this channel, right? Because my whole purpose in this channel is to support the healing of Black women, particularly Black women who are trying to leave toxic jobs. That is my mission, right? So my hope is that you subscribe to the channel. You can do it right now, right? Subscribe to the channel. And you can also turn the notifications bell if you wish, right, to receive information about when I go live or when I post another video. Now, I also want to share with the audience that we are in holiday season. So I have a free holiday gift guide for Black women healing from toxic work environments. So you can gift yourself or gift other Black women in toxic jobs, and all the different things that I list on there. They're all for Black women and they are created by Black women. Okay, so I'll put that in the description section also. And then I'm also offering a roadmap. So Carolyn talked a lot about foundation, right? So when we think about foundation, I know for me, I was so devastated about what was going on at that job that I felt just like you talked about, being knocked on your butt, right? I was knocked on my butt. And I think that God had to keep telling me the lesson, giving me signs over and over again, because I wasn't paying attention. And I kept trying to make something work that was not working for me. And when I said, you know what, this is not working for me, let me sit and be in this wounded space for a moment. But I need a roadmap about how to get out of this place, right? How do I really connect to what is it that I want from my life? And what do I need to remove from my life? And what do I need to add to my life, right? So I created my own roadmap. for doing that and therapy, right? So I think it's helpful to know or to think about using a roadmap. And so I've created a roadmap for myself, but I also want to share it with you too, right? So I'll put that link also about the roadmap that I've developed. It's called Welcome to Your Queendom. So, how do we connect to
Mm,
ourselves? We
mm,
are queens, right? So, how do we reconnect to our queendom? And I also have a time limited bonus for real time limited about a 15-minute accountability session with me, right? So, once those slots are taken, that's it, right? So the 15-minute accountability session is like, I'm your sister. I'm just checking in with you. If there are certain areas you feel stuck on in terms of the workbook, then we can have an accountability session. So that information will be in the description section. So again, subscribe to the channel and share this information with other Black women. And lastly, just remember your light and remember you deserve so much more. And if people or environments don't recognize it, those are not the people or the environment for you. Okay. So we are winding down. I want to say to everyone, thank you for tuning in. Again, I'll have Carolyn's information and the other information I just talked about in the description section. So have a good night and I will see you next time. Bye
peace.
bye.